right. Hello, everybody. Hi. All right, so welcome to the Hanson Historical Society. This is our October meeting. It is our final presentation of the season. Hard to believe it's already come so soon. We do have two events coming up. On the 21st, we have our rescheduled market. That will be, we'll touch on that in just a few minutes here. Then in November, we'll also have our annual dinner. Details will be announced as soon as we have them. So first thing I just want to jump into here, for those that haven't heard the news yet, John Campbell, he was president at different times of Halifax and Whitman's Historical Societies. He did pass away the other day, so I'm just going to go ahead and read his obituary here. John D. Campbell, 81, a longtime resident of Halifax, died Saturday, September 30th, surrounded by his loving family after a brave battle with cancer. He was the beloved husband of Natalie Campbell. Born in Melrose and raised in Hanson, he was the son of the late Alexander and Dorothy Campbell, a graduate of Whitman Hanson High School, class of 1961. John had been the owner and operator of Harding Print, a family business located in Whitman, and a familiar face in the Whitman community. Along with being an active member of the Kiwanis and JCs, John was instrumental in forming the Whitman Historical Society and donated countless hours to the collecting, cataloging, and the storing of many historical articles, artifacts, and documents. He will be remembered for his generosity in donating numerous print jobs to local charities and organizations, always delivering them himself in his trusted pickup truck. And of course, each morning, if you were looking for John, you could always find him at Millie's. As a resident of Halifax for over 60 years, John served as chairman of the building committee, which I actually kind of worked under him. I worked for Halifax's building maintenance. And he was active with the Halifax Historical Society and helped at the Halifax Food Pantry. John loved his antique home in Halifax and truly enjoyed working on his tractors and planting his bountiful vegetable garden, which he was always happy to share with family and friends. When John was not working, tending to his yard, or volunteering somewhere, John could be found on the golf course, enjoying a round of golf with his many friends. In addition to his loving wife, Natalie, he is survived by his children, Stephen Campbell and his wife, Suzanne, John D. Campbell Jr., all of Halifax, his stepchildren, Tara Brown and her husband, Danny, Gretchen Eggers and her husband, Zach, Adam Morse, and, there we go, his wife, Tracy. He is also survived by his sister Joan Waukee and her husband Jack of Duxbury, 14 grandchildren and 11 great-grandchildren. He was predeceased by his daughter Carrie. Family and friends are invited to attend his visiting hours on Monday, October 9th from 4 to 7 p.m. in the Blanchard Funeral Chapel in Plymouth Street in Whitman. And his funeral services will be on Tuesday, October 10th at 11 a.m. in the chapel. In lieu of flowers, donations may be made to the Halifax Helping Hand and Food Pantry, 503 Plymouth Street, Halifax. Well, that is obviously another sad loss in historical circles here in our local communities. And speaking of that, I do want to go to Patty Norton here. She does want to say a few words here.
Thank you very much, Kurt.
You're welcome.
I would like to thank the Historical Society for the generous donation to the food pantry, for showing up at John's wake and everything. It really helped me a lot. I want to thank every member here. You've really been very helpful to me. And thank you very much from John and his family.
Thank you, Patty. I would like to welcome Kristen Evans to give her presentation on the Bridgewater Triangle.
Thank you.
Just grab this water.
Thank you so much, everyone, for having me here. So I grew up in Hanson. I moved out when I was 19, came back to start a family in the early 2000s, and I don't know why I never questioned why everything was named after Indians, but I started to question it, and my first stop was with stopping here and talking to Patty and John, and they were so helpful. Brought me right down to the town hall and confirmed that where I grew up, it was all Indian paths. And I grew up on Cross Street, and it was actually a crossway, so I theorized that the name Cross Street came from the fact that it was an Indian crossway. At the same time, I had a friend whose daughter was really into the paranormal, and I had to go to a birthday party, and I bought her a book called Mysterious Massachusetts, and just opened up to one page, and it's about the Bridgewater Triangle. I'd never heard of it. I had grown up with this story in my head that I started to think was a figment of my imagination. I was 6 years old. It was 1976. There was this monster dog on the loose in Abington. And I climbed up like 25 feet into a hemlock tree, and I stayed there all day because I knew that if I looked down the street, I was going to see this bloody monster dog. And anytime over the years when I mentioned it, nobody knew what I was talking about. So when I saw that, I just like got intrigued. I got hooked. So my interest in like Native American history locally around here and the Bridgewater Triangle kind of like all started at the same time. Okay. And there are so many subjects with the Bridgewater Triangle. It was really hard to pare this down because I kind of cover everything. I tried to focus on things that are relevant to Hanson because Hanson definitely is part of the Bridgewater Triangle. Okay. The history of the Bridgewater Triangle is a dark one. This area of Massachusetts seems to have always been a magnet for high strangeness, evil, bad fortune, mysterious events. Strange creatures are said to roam its forests and swamps. Enigmatic stone structures dot the land. Hauntings and poltergeist activity are not uncommon. Suicides, violent murders, drownings, horrific accidents plague this area and have for centuries. The Bridgewater Triangle certainly seems to be a window into another plane of existence where just about anything can and does happen. Reports of run-ins with aliens, cryptid creatures, and animals that simply have no business here, like seals, cow moose, and mountain lions, give this area its reputation as being one of the world's strangest places. So these are the basic characteristics of the Bridgewater Triangle. Site of a heavy ancient Indian population dating back at least 8,000 years. Magnet for strange events, oddities, violent crimes, and accidents. Reputedly home to cryptid creatures. Animals not indigenous to our area appear here. Hauntings and poltergeist activity are frequent. There are many reports of UFOs. Mysterious stone structures, stone carvings known as petroglyphs, and rock formations. A history of cult activity, Santeria, voodoo, Satanism, and the dark arts in general, and bizarre local legends, and a strange and violent history. The Bridgewater Triangle was introduced to the world in 1980 in Boston Magazine. Boston Magazine used to have this fringe section where they would talk about like, you know, oddities and stuff. And in 1980, an article was published by Peter Rodman and Lauren Coleman. And in it, they described where it was, but there was never really an official map to go with it. So I played around with the map, and it depends on where you put the apex points. Like if you put them in the middle of the towns, it cuts towns out. If you put them on the edges, it includes more towns. So it definitely skirts Hanson. That being said, the energy spills out of this triangle area, and there's a reason why he called it a triangle, but it's not really a triangle. Okay, I wanted to get into the Black Dog of Abington because that's like what like started it for me. All right. So on April 31st, 1976, on Summer Street in Abington, which was all farmland at the time, everybody had horses. A little girl came out to feed her horses at like 7 o'clock in the morning and found the horses dead with their throats being ripped out by this giant dog. So she ran into the house. Her dad was a firefighter. He came out with a baseball bat. The thing was just not fazed. Went back, got his pistol, shot at it, missed, again, not fazed. So children had to be escorted to school with like rifles, and the police, and everybody was freaked out. The police got over 1,000 calls of like, I think the dog's here, or I think the dog. This only lasted 24 hours. The last time the dog was seen was at the Summer Street railroad tracks, where an officer named Frank Curran had a clear shot of it as it was slowly sauntering down the railroad tracks. Again, the shot missed, and the dog was never seen again. There's the Summer Street railroad tracks. As you can see, I don't know how you could miss. I don't know. It's a true mystery. All right, so this is Plymouth and Bristol County, known as the Old Colony. I feel like this is a better map of like the areas affected. All right, and the triangle thing. This came from a book from the 1920s by Charles Fort. The book was called Low, and he had a chapter about strange areas, gateway areas, vortex areas where anything could pass through, and he called them triangles. No one really talked about that term again until the 1970s with the book The Bermuda Triangle by Charles Berlitz. So in the 80s, it was kind of like a joke about the Bridgewater Triangle, and it would be in rag mags, you know, National Enquirer, Sun Times. It was like fun, you know. But by like the early 1990s, it was like people were more interested. So this is the first time it was ever featured on TV. It's on Chronicle.
Jungle here.
Yeah.
The Hockomock Swamp, 200 square miles, wild and dense with history and mystery. It's an area that's had more than its fair share of gruesome murders, UFO sightings, hauntings, and bizarre creatures. Bounded by Abington to the north, Rehoboth and the Freetown State Forest in the south, the region has been dubbed the Bridgewater Triangle.
So you're convinced this whole area has something strange going on?
Well, yeah, the whole Bridgewater Triangle area definitely does. I spoke to a chief of a Native American Indian tribe. He recognized the map right away, and he said, my people have cursed this area.
Joe DeAndrade of Bridgewater needs no convincing. Here on the edge of the Hockomock, he saw something he'll never forget.
And I looked at it, and I'm like, I was in shock. I was like, what?
What DeAndre says he saw was a Bigfoot-like creature several hundred yards away.
And what did it do?
It walked very slowly. Okay, it walked like this. You know, I said to myself, who's going to believe me, you know? But
And when you
anyways,
came back and told people, did anybody believe you?
tell you the truth, by the looks in their faces, they looked skeptical, probably saying, oh, Joe, you know. But I reminded them, I am not the only one who has seen this.
It's the Bridgewater area. It's not that unusual for things like that to happen.
Jim Rice of Bridgewater has also been touched by the mysteries of the Hockomock.
Basically, right where that river bends off, we saw a light coming from around the bend, a friend and I, and at first we thought it was just a couple of canoers because it was at night and we thought maybe some people were hunting. And then it got to the point where the light entered the clearing and there was no canoe. It was just balls of light about the size of baseballs. I know it wasn't a flashlight. I know it wasn't a lantern. I know it wasn't ball lightning or some sort of reflection of the moon off the water. Other than that, all I can say is I've ruled out what it isn't, and what it is, I guess that's all up to the imagination.
Charles Robinson says we need only go back to the Algonquin language for insight into the Hockomock.
It's a word describing, or a word that's synonymous with Satan.
Robinson, who lives in Rehoboth, has compiled ghost stories from his local area and beyond. He's not sure he buys all the weird tales coming out of the Bridgewater Triangle, but his training in Native American archaeology taught him that the Indians wanted no part of the Hockomock.
The Indians were genuinely staying away from it. We know that much from the early colonial writers.
I'll tell you something, right? I am not afraid to speak about it because a lot of people that know me will say, oh, here he comes, you know, Bigfoot man.
Joe DeAndrade, now a self-dubbed paranormal investigator, says the Bridgewater Triangle has changed his life.
Those people who do not understand what I do, then, you know, that is their problem, you know. If maybe eventually their mind will open and realize that we live in a very mysterious world.
One of the things I really, really like about this Chronicle episode is it's the only time that Charles Turek Robinson was ever interviewed. He died about 8 years ago at 53. And he created most of the all the legends pretty much. They all pretty much come from this book. And he is a Harvard-educated anthropologist, archaeologist, had no interest in this stuff at all, but just started to notice that, where there were special, stone structures, weird things were happening. So I am going to get back to this a little bit, but excellent read if anybody's interested in great true ghost stories. So there's been an explosion of interest, in the last 15 years, I would say, and the Bridgewater Triangle has been featured almost on every, History Channel, paranormal show. The last one was beyond Skinwalker Ranch. If anyone doesn't know what Skinwalker Ranch is, it's an area out west that has almost the exact same phenomenon that's going on here. So they came out and they investigated a few places in the Bridgewater Triangle, and they seemed to be really surprised that all of their equipment failed. But that's something that happens here. Okay, Native American connection. It's definitely a big part of the Bridgewater Triangle. Heavy Native population in both Plymouth and Bristol counties until plague decimated the Massachusetts and Wampanoag tribes in the years 1617 to 1620. The Massachusetts tribes suffered the most with a near 100% mortality rate. Deserted villages were covered in bones when the colonists arrived. Desecration of nearly all Native American burial grounds, the resting place of tens of thousands of people. Burial grounds that are discovered typically happen by accident during construction and digging, though many still exist in the woods of the towns of the Bridgewater Triangle, not excluding Hanson, which has a number of sacred sites, some of which are so sophisticated they act as calendars marking celestial events as equinoxes, solstices, and even aligning with constellations. Many believe that the energy in the Bridgewater Triangle is caused by the gruesome acts committed on the land in 1675 to 1676 during King Philip's War. The area around Hanson is important since the event of Wamsutta's capture, King Philip's brother, was a starting point for the war. Didn't happen far from here. And not only was King Philip's brother taken not far from Hanson, but also his wife and son, which soon resulted in the war's end. I mean, that happened not even 4 miles away from here. I mean, King Philip's War was fought all over New England, but some really significant events happened right here.
Archaeologists digging into the past, you might think of Egypt or Greece, places rich in ancient antiquities, but we can also add Middleborough to that list. For decades, a group from Bridgewater State University has been painstakingly excavating thousands of Native American artifacts.
And they're doing this right to the Middleborough Little League fields, right next door.
This is a location where Native Americans lived and worked for thousands of years. We are exploring their material culture, the things they made and left behind.
Dr. Curtis Hoffman, professor emeritus at Bridgewater State, leads the effort, which is finding plenty.
We are somewhere about 27,500 items total.
Carbon dating shows some of those artifacts go back 8,000 years to when what was called the Namaskit band lived here.
Okay.
We know them today as the Wampanoags. A sampling of the artifacts is housed at the Robbins Museum in Middleborough.
We have a large number of chipped stone tools, so those would be points and knives and scrapers and things like that.
They're also finding a large number of artifacts they believe were used in ceremonies.
And these include stones used to produce red, black, and yellow pigment. They include highly polished pebbles, which may have been used inside of rattles.
If you're not extremely patient, this isn't the work for you. But when they find something...
It's very exciting. It is very exciting because you realize that someone has used that, someone has touched that.
It's a link, and it's fascinating to think that there were people here that long ago.
And it really takes a trained eye to do the work. They look for stone items that show evidence of being shaped by human hands, and that's how they tell the difference between a plain old rock and something that is a true Native American artifact.
And like I said, a lot of burial grounds are found by accident during construction. This happened in the 70s when they were building Solome's Elementary School in Norton, and they found a 500-year-old burial ground. And this always happens. The building always, they end up getting it passed through and they just build right over it. Another one, Indian village unearthed in Middleborough. For time's sake, I was gonna tell you like the whole story that's in here. I'm just gonna skim through it. So Charles Trueck Robinson has a really, really good chapter in here about two witnesses that used to hike at this place during the dig. And apparently during the dig, all kinds of people were having really strange paranormal experiences, but they didn't believe it. They were like, this is just so peaceful. We love it here. But then the wife started to feel watched. And she's like, I don't really want to go back there. And her husband kind of thought she was crazy, whatever. So she didn't want to go back there anymore. So he went there one day and he found, I'll just read it. I decided to go to the lake to unwind. I walked through the woods near the North Shore and I came to the abandoned archaeological site. I started poking around, looking for stone artifacts, arrowheads, and that kind of thing. Sometimes erosion would bring them up to the surface. After a few minutes, I found something incredible. It looked like a stone pendant lying half buried in some loose soil. I picked it up and it was exciting. I felt good holding on to something so ancient in my hands. It really was a great find. It was made of pretty reddish stone, maybe jasper. It was beautifully polished, blah, blah, blah. As Manny admired his discovery, he experienced something strange. I don't know how to explain it, but I was overcome by this powerful urge to put this artifact back where I found it. I mean, that's the last thing I wanted to do, but I had that urge. Well, he decided to take it home anyway. All right. When he returned home, Manny once again admired the ancient Indian artifact. Then he carefully placed it on his dresser and went to bed. That night, he indicates he experienced a striking and vivid dream, a dream in which an elderly man, an Indian, was standing at the foot of his bed staring at him in silence. The man had a black turtle painted on his cheek and silver hair that was long on one side and shaven short on the other. The vivid dream seemed to last for a few moments, and then Manny suddenly woke up in a cold sweat. I felt very shaken. I looked at the clock. I saw it was about midnight. For some reason, the dream really upset me. It was so realistic and vivid. I couldn't get back to sleep. I got out of bed, turned on the light, and that's when I noticed it. The stone pendant was gone from my dresser, and he never found it. Okay, so this happened in Hanson, another example of how, like, in excavating and construction, bones are found. So this happened, like, right around the corner.
The corner of Reed Street, where Reed Street comes out on the main street.
Do you know the number of the house now? Because I'm guessing that the numbers have changed.
I can't remember offhand, but it's a stucco house.
Does it look old?
The house is not old.
Okay, yeah, because 1927, yeah, right.
It was found when they dug the foundation for the house.
Yeah, fascinating, right?
1920 it was.
And I'd love to know what happened to the bones, because I can't, like, the trail ends there.
Or anything, but
And then that funerary item was also found, and arrowheads, and again, I don't know what happened to, I mean, it could be at the Robbins Museum, it could be in someone's basement, someone could have sold it, I don't know. Okay, and then this is, they called her the last of the Wampanoags. Zavia Gould Mitchell, she was from Abington. She was prolific. She published this book and got her truth out in the late 1800s. She also helped all Native American tribes by passing legislature that helped everybody that was kind of getting screwed with their land at the time, but they still get whatever. It is what it is. This is one of my favorite subjects. Animals that don't belong here, but appear here anyway, okay? Alligators. Alligators don't belong in Massachusetts, right? But we've had 8 sightings of alligators. All right? Starting in 1929 in Abington, 5-foot alligator was seen roaming about wherever he chooses and devouring whatever appeals to his taste. The gator was not captured. That was from the Globe. 2005, Rehoboth, a local boy encountered 2 alligators. July 2000, a lot, and it really strange if you look. Look how many happened in 2005, but not all in the same area. Middleborough, July 2005, Brockton, 2005, another one in Brockton, 2005, September 2005, Abington and Island Grove. 5-foot-long alligator takes up residence at Island Grove Pond, and the creature is not caught. Well, I was thinking, all right, there was one in 1929 in Abington, and then there's one in 2005. How long do alligators live? They can live up to 100 years. I never knew that. Neither one of them were found, though. I'm not going swimming in Island Grove, no thanks. I mean, I wouldn't anyway, but again, 2010, 2 more. I mean, doesn't really make much sense. I mean, like, you could make a case like some people have exotic animals, but like that many weirdos around here that are like letting alligators go. Okay, so in 1993, there were sightings of a mountain lion in Mansfield and Easton, and someone actually got a video of it. Again, it was never caught. It just probably just moved away, right? 6 weeks after that, a decapitated African several was found in Hockomock Swamp. They don't think it was the same cat, but it was, again, odd. And here's the stuff about the Easton mountain lion, which, you know, made news for the 6 weeks that it was being seen. Cow moose. A few years before this, which this happened in 2003, I want to say maybe 3 years before, hunters started reporting finding evidence of moose in the swamp, but nobody believed them. Like, they were finding dung, but they were like, that it can't be, they're not here. But then one got hit by a car on Route 105, and then you can't deny that, right? 1972, 2 women were playing golf, and a mountain lion just walked by. This is another one of my favorites, because this happened in the span of 2 weeks, right? East Bridgewater and Middleborough, 2 baby seals, 1 harp seal, 1 harbor seal, both ended up on someone's front lawn. 1 in East Bridgewater, 1 in Middleborough. The kids were psyched. One of them like tried to hide it in the bathtub, and they wanted to keep it. I mean, wouldn't you want to keep it? Look how cute it is. Yeah, and when it was published in the Globe said the mammals usually turn around long before they've traveled a route equal to the Boston Marathon. It really didn't make much sense for both of them to travel that far inland. A beluga whale was in Dighton in 2014. Those whales belong in the Arctic, has no business being around here. Now we're going to get into Bigfoot in the Bridgewater Triangle, and you're going to be very surprised to know how much has happened in Hanson. This is my friend Rich. Rich had an experience about 3 years ago, and we've been kind of investigating around his way in Bridgewater, which his sighting happened literally 5 miles in a straight line to the Hanson sighting, which was a Class A sighting, meaning somebody saw it with their eyes, broad daylight, no denying it. The witness was a Patriot Ledger editor, so he didn't really say anything for a few years, but then it was really bothering him. He wanted to get it off his chest, so he did finally report it. So I'm going to talk a little bit about just the old classic sightings, and then Rich is going to come up and he's going to tell you a little bit about his sighting, and then we're going to show you some of the stuff that we found in Hanson. Okay, so we already know this guy. All right, so his sighting in 1978, which was right off of Broad Street on Route 18, by the way. His sighting and the sighting of John Baker, who was a fur trapper. His sighting is the only one that actually happened in Hockomock Swamp. He was fur trapping in a canoe, and he was stalked by this Bigfoot creature. Even now, if you looked it up, you're not going to find any recent Bigfoot sightings, but there are tons. All you're going to find are these old regurgitated stories. There's so much more, though. So flash forward to 2009. Like, there was nothing going on from 80 to 2009, but all of a sudden, in the course of 6 months, all of a sudden, like, a bunch of stuff got reported, right? The most interesting one was a couple driving down Route 140 in Freetown, and I'll just read it. Me and my girlfriend were riding in the Jeep on Route 140 from New Bedford to Freetown tonight, July 14, 2009. And at about 11 o'clock, my girlfriend seen, I love that Massachusetts, this large brown hair covered man standing from a crouched position in the side of the 2-lane highway. She lets out a scream, prompting me to look at the creature standing there. He made fluid movements like a man, but had an ape-like quality. You couldn't see his face, but upon returning to the area, we saw the man, where the man was, and there was nothing. After calling 911 and telling them that someone was running in the median of the highway, they told us they had similar reports of what we saw on that stretch of highway between exit 10 and exit 8, and they told us that they were investigating. Okay, this is just worth mentioning. I wasn't going to mention it, but it's worth mentioning. 2014, a friend of mine contacts me, and she's like, Kristen, my friend's son was just out playing in the woods, and they found this foot. Right? So the mother, like he brought it home, and the mother was like, went out to the garage. She's like, it's like this metal, like, I'm not touching it, right? So they sent it to the police. The police sent it to the medical examiner. The medical examiner determined it was not human. All right, so this is the Hanson Bigfoot sighting. Just figured out exactly where it happened. It happened right near Presidential Titanium in Parker Sheds. And it was crossing from the Parker Sheds side of the street, and it was crossing over to the conservation land. The conservation land across the street is where Rich and I have been finding so much stuff, okay? I was driving near the town dump at 1 o'clock in the afternoon around the end of June last year. It was raining very hard. A large figure came out of nowhere. I hit my brakes, but it was far enough back that I would not have hit it. There was a car coming at me the other way. It almost ran into the back of that car. It turned a little sideways to avoid the car, and that's when I knew it was not a person or a bear. When it turned, it flung its arms up and back a little to miss the car. It was a little hunched over. Its shoulders were extremely wide. I couldn't make out any facial features. It was covered in dark brown hair and appeared to have hardly any neck. Everybody describes the Bigfoot the same. You saw the weird picture that, of Joe DeAndre. I couldn't make out any facial features. It was covered in dark hair and appeared to have hardly any neck. It was about 6 inches taller than the minivan, and it almost ran into. If it was standing straight up, I would guess it would be 6 to 6.5 feet tall. The whole thing only took 2 or 3 seconds, but it really shook me up. I have always hiked in the woods around here and done a lot of tracking of animals of all kinds. I have never seen anything that would resemble a Bigfoot track. I've always had doubts about people seeing these things, but now I will never doubt again. It won't keep me from going in the woods, but I'll keep my eyes peeled from now on. This is just the follow-up report. He just mentions that, the guy's definitely out in the woods a lot. Didn't want to tell his daughter because he didn't want her to stop hiking with him. So this is a field guide to tree structures that are these mysterious, artistic, beautiful geometric designs that you'll find in the woods, supposedly made by Bigfoot, okay? The one on the right, we found in Rich's backyard on our first investigation. You can see it's pretty identical. Okay, do you want to come up and talk a little? Okay. All right, the rest of them are all Hanson. Okay, so.
You can slide underneath here.
Okay. I mean, you do have to keep an open mind about this. A lot of you are going to say oh yeah, nature does that, storms do that, but there are certain qualities to these things that look like they're intentional.
Yeah, so my name's Rich. How you doing? Thanks for having me. I was just a guy, just hanging out my 3 acres in Bridgewater on the Halifax line, and wasn't bothering anybody. And I was hearing things out in the woods. It was continuous, like, oh, that's a bear, that's a fisher cat, you're naming them all in your head. And how it started for me was, I heard footfall, 100% no doubt in my mind. I thought there was a big human out walking around. I heard footfall, I was just like, this is nuts, like, who's out there? So I have 3 acres and it abuts like 94 acres of conservation. And then the Taunton River's out like a mile away. So I'm like trying to put in my head, like, I've owned this house for how long? Who would be out there, So I would take my kids out there for adventures, not thinking much of it. I do have a ghost hunting background. I have a lot of spirituality and things like that, and I've done a lot of investigations and helped a lot of people as far as telling them what to do with that stuff, So I kind of took the scientific approach, you know. If I don't see it, I don't believe it. You know, that's just the way it is. I believe in ghosts because one walked up to me, you know. I was like, hey, how you doing? My name's Rich. You know? Oh, you already knew that. That's the scary part when they know your name. So, yeah, so I went out in the woods with my kids. I even have pictures of us. We all had like weapons. We were going to look for what it was, you know. I wasn't really taking it serious, you know. And I walked up to this path, and I'll never forget it. And what got me was a structure. I looked at it, and there was these 2 birch trees like this. And they're on this moss mound, which is on a hill. So now we're standing up over everything. And I look, and there's a tree going across it, like an upside down A. So I go, oh, maybe it fell from up here. And I'm like, oh, there's no trees up there, that's weird. So then I start following it, and I see it was broken off. And it's up about, say about 6 feet, I'm looking up at it. And it comes across this end, and this is where I get hooked. And it's kind of figuratively too, I guess, but.
I know where you're going with this one, yeah.
It forked off, right? And it went in between 2 other trees. It went like this. And I sat here like this with my kids, you know, hey, what are we gonna do? You know, and I'm over here going, we're gonna get out of here is what we gotta do. You know, it hit me that you had to have thumbs to do that. And there's nobody out there. There's never, I own the house for 20-something years now. And so that started happening to me. So I started having more and more instances, things tossed at me, started really picking up, ramping up, you know. And I called a friend of mine, and it turned out it was a mutual friend. And he had had experiences over by the prison in Bridgewater. So I said, what do I do? I said, I don't know if I'm going crazy or is this characteristic of this type of behavior, blah, blah, blah. He says, make yourself a gifting stump. A gifting stump. I've heard about this, so I started watching all the Bigfoot shows. I probably have 1,000 hours of research into it because now I am hooked. I'm down the wormhole. I can't get out. There's no getting me out of here. He might take me out of here, but you know, or she. But but you know, I'm hooked. You know, so I want to know everything about this. I'm YouTubing. I'm History Channel, and I'm Travel Channel. I'm Discovery Channel. I am on the run, and I have found out so many things that made so much sense up at my home, on my property, for 20 years. You know, it's like in that, where the detective figures something out in the show, and he goes, all these things flash in his head. I start ching, going down the list. So after I did my gifting stuff, I got these oatmeal raisin cookies are my favorite, especially when they're warm and soft. Just saying, ladies. But
on the 21st.
Thanks for that. That and the quality junk I'm in. So I took these oatmeal cookies, and I'm a bit of a loon, and I held them up in the air because I figured it must be watching me. He's always watching me. I'm very important, you know. So I hold it up in the air. I'm like, these are my favorite cookies right here, and I put them down, and I put them in between these saplings. Because what I did was I took the sapling branches and I put them there. So if something scurried up there, it would knock it off, right? So I'm trying to be scientific and investigate at the same time here, right? So I put it right between there. So a day or two goes by, nothing happens. Well, I start getting offended because those are like my favorite cookies, and now they're not even good anymore. So I'm yelling out to the woods again. My neighbor must be going, what's this guy doing? So I'm like, hey, those are my favorite cookies, right? Hand to God. The next day I come out, cookies are gone. And now I'm looking for crumbs, right? Isn't that normal? You look for crumbs, right? The saplings are in the same exact, so I got pictures on this on my phone. I just didn't have time to put them on here so you could see them all, but you're welcome to look at them. So there's 2 saplings, they're not moved. Nothing's moved. And I'm like, it was picked up and someone walked away with it. There wasn't nothing like a little chewed up piece, a crumb at the, I'm on my hands and knees and on the stump going, come on, this can't be real, right? It's really ramping up in my head, reality. And so a couple of days went by, I yelled at the woods again. Seems to be a thing I do. And lo and behold, the next day I came out, and I probably stood there for about 5 minutes motionless when I walked up to the gifting stump. There was a perfectly torn piece of tree lichen. And one piece, I got it on my phone. I couldn't do it, so I couldn't even fake it, because well, look at these things. How the hell am I going to do that with that? So it was perfectly placed between the 2 saplings on my stump. And it all just hits me. And now I got goosebumps, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, there's no way the wind didn't put it there. oh, here comes a piece of perfectly torn off tree lichen. It's just not gonna happen. So what I have done to show you when it comes to this stuff, I try to put that scientific touch to it, that reality to it. I know that lichen didn't land between that sapling with the wind. I know that. We all know that, I bet. When you see it, you'll know it, right? So I've since received more gifts, and it's actually been pretty wonderful. So they introduced me to Kristen, because she has a plethora of information. I didn't know how much information was about this area until I started talking. We go out in the woods, and she's like, and we're looking around the structure, she's like, oh, hey, by the way, and what? Where did that come from, right? Next we know, UFOs, aliens. But, so they say a lot of these structures here, they always search for the meaning of them. You know, that's the one thing they always do. Can you go back to the other one, actually? What do we call that one? We made up the name for it.
A wheel.
This guy. Look at this. So we're here walking around my yard, right? Now we're going off to research, right? I've got a game camera set up. So I've come a long way that they see at night. So to me, it's a beacon to them. That's why I feel you don't get a lot. I got some weird stuff on mine. That's a different story. But I think it's related with him anyway. So we come along, and Kristen has a great eye for this stuff. And she turns around, she goes, look at that. And I'm looking at it going, yeah, it's a bent tree. That's pretty cool. And then I keep looking at it, right? It looks like a dream catcher kind of, right?
Yeah. And it's hard to tell the height, but it's huge. It was huge.
It's huge. This is like, you got a picture of this. I got a picture.
Yeah, so I was standing at, and I was probably, that's how big it was, yeah.
It's huge. And I'm standing on, like, again, my mouth's on, I'm just, like that. This can only be done with thumbs. And if you walk up to it, this one's over that one, this one's behind this one's over here between this one's bent, that one's up, this one's down. Kids out in the woods can't do this. Hunters can't go do.
And kids don't go in the woods anymore, really, so.
Yeah, I know, they're too busy with video games, but yeah, go ahead, I'm sorry, go on to the next one. That one's my favorite, that was in my yard.
Oh, I know, that's one of my,
It's pretty awesome. So they talk a lot too, see the crisscross here? It's mainly the X. But this has been taken a lot of, Kristen, I didn't find out about the book until we went out that day. Mm-hmm. And of course she researches it. It says, look what I found. And then she starts sending me comparisons side by side of things on my property. I'm like, yeah, new phone, who this? Like, wrong number, I'm on it. Like, it blew my mind because, again, that's further into the reality of it. So what I do is I ramp up my percentage of believability. So I'm about 95% because I haven't seen it. I can't tell you it's 100. You know what I mean? And I don't walk out in the woods going, Bigfoot, Bigfoot, Bigfoot. Oh, look at Bigfoot, oh, Bigfoot. You just don't, if you think like that, it's just, you're not going to get anywhere.
And from my perspective, if you asked me 5 years ago if I believed in Bigfoot, I'd say absolutely not. But I respect that people feel like they, it was the bottom of my list. But then I just started witnessing things that made me really interested.
And we witnessed a ton of them.
Yeah.
And I was open-minded, like I said, from the paranormal world, the EVP recordings and stuff like that. I got tons of it. I had a website. My whole family was involved in it. So if I approached it like that, and I was open-minded. So this is in Hanson here.
That's my most recent find. I just found that a couple weeks ago. Unfortunately, I couldn't get the videos in because if you saw the video of this thing, you would be like, it's artistic. I mean, it could be like in the Berkshires, like in someone's like an artist's yard.
That's right. And I got one similar to this in my yard as well. The first picture we had matched.
That one's about 30 feet up.
This is huge. See the X here?
And that's only part of it.
A fork that comes in between them. It doesn't go underneath this one. It's actually in front of that one. And then this one's up here, you see? Right? So this is where we start, as researchers, start looking at this going, all right, how did Mother Nature do this? So you go over to tree one, you make it up, you number them in your head.
Yeah.
So tree two fell like this, and then you go, how did tree three get there?
Yeah, like, so one of the...
Tree three's tree one?
Yeah, so what we always look for is like, where did it fall from? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But a lot of times you'll find trees that are not in the area at all, a birch tree or whatever, and it's like definitely been brought in.
With a stump on it.
Right.
That giveaway. I've seen a few of those. where it's upside down.
And nobody knows why, but they seem to be obsessed with making them as clean as possible, so they usually debarked.
Well, that's the other thing that
So some of them you can see, they did debark some of them, but
Yes.
maybe they were in a rush. I don't know.
So
I don't know how they
that
think.
theory a couple of years ago, because I have my yard, remember we found the kindergarten?
Yeah.
And then we found the high school, I call it. So
Yeah.
There's all these little miniature area where all these sticks were. And the structures like this, but they look like miniature. It was crazy, right? So then we go out there and the whole place is just torn down. There was just trees snapped everywhere. And I'm standing in the middle of it going, all these big pine trees. I'm like, how did a windstorm happen here? I'm trying to scientifically figure out how the windstorm came down and blew out 100 trees and made them all barkless and leaning, you know? It just didn't make sense to me. So it makes sense to me in the long run, because these are the noise I was hearing when I was in my yard.
And also worth mentioning, we do believe, and a lot of people believe that that they travel in families.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? So what Rich is referring to, the schoolhouse, is we found it was like gold, like the little baby tree bend, and then the medium, and then the big one, almost, you know what I mean?
It was nuts.
And then the first, also worth mentioning, the first time we ever met, and I investigated Rich's yard with him, 3 days later, as the crow flies about 1.5 miles straight behind his house is the Taunton River, somebody had found something on their trail cam and had someone come out and investigate, and they found a Bigfoot track.
Cast it and documented it.
What a coincidence, right?
And now we're all part of a group together too. And they were already renowned. Dave McCullough is the New England BFRO president.
And he's the one who came and investigated the Hanson sighting.
Yes, exactly.
Where in Hanson is that? The town forest?
No, that actually is where the Plymouth County Hospital is.
Oh, no. Okay.
Which most of the stuff that we're finding is near Hanson Green.
Oh, okay.
So it's kind of like, it's in the conservation land behind Route 27, but if you walk through it wouldn't take that long to get there. This I just found by accident, and I was like, oh my God. But when I looked at it on a map, it goes in a straight line to the other side.
You would walk right by that and not notice this. You really would. I mean, it would take you a minute to find this. And she got an eye for that. Go ahead.
I have a horse farm on High Street that abuts this, and in the morning I'm down there and I'm feeding the horses, or late at night it's dark, and I feel like someone's always watching me.
That's a phenomenon with this.
And it freaks me out. I'm usually on the phone with my husband because I'm so nervous down there. I feel like somebody's
Your body's telling you something, right?
Oh, the hair's usually.
How close are you to where the hospital was?
A couple 100 feet.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I was shocked to find this where I did.
I'll bring them into this. What happened to me with that same family, I was working in my yard one day, and I got about an acre and a half fenced in, and then the rest is all just woods. I mean, it's like skunk cabbage out there, it's wetlands, it's dry lands, it's whatever. And I felt that same feeling. And I'm sitting there working, and all of a sudden I heard, and now this is, to me as a human, this changed me. This totally changed me. So I heard one pull. I heard a tree snap and come to the ground. It was just like that, and I knew it was a big tree. I knew it wasn't a little tree. It had to be 8 inches or more. This is in my head, knowing because I have a lot of trees in my land, that's what that sounded like. One pull. It wasn't a crack, wasn't a crinkle. So it was just one loud shh. And I had that feeling prior to what you're talking about, right? To where I'm working and I'm like doing this.
Yeah.
Right? So I said, I got it on my phone. I walked again. I had a speaker, but it wasn't loud enough. And we all know how that's going tonight. So, so I walked out to the fence and I said, come on, where are you at? And I walked up to my fence and I'm holding it, right? Being a big brave dude, right? And I'm holding it out there like this, and I can't hear nothing. I can't see nothing, but woods. And I'm like, he was right there. I can hear it. It has to be less than a football field away. I should be able to see you, right? So I walk up to my fence, and all of a sudden I hear this guttural.
I heard that the other day.
Stop.
It's on my phone. You can listen to it if you want.
Good night, everyone.
I heard it was the 6th grader.
Really?
I had whiplash, and I thought it was like, oh, a bear, because the bear's been around. I'm like, do bears grunt? And I had whiplash. I was putting a halter on one of the horses. I heard that grunt.
Can we come to your backyard?
Can we hang out?
Really? Seriously?
It was almost like he projected it at
Oh,
me.
sure, you feed the horses.
Clean the powder. I mean, keep in mind, I had many experiences prior to this. So now I'm in that 80, 90%, right, at the time. And then now, as a human being, I just heard what sounded like another human being. A very big human being. So I go from big tough Bigfoot guy to, I'm gonna step back here. And now I'm out on my lawn and I'm hitting it. My lawn's way far away from my fence. Not far enough, but far away. And I'm literally like this. And I'm rethinking my life. Like, what did I just hear?
The sound was terrifying. It was literally, it sounded so angry, it was scary.
But I could hear it, but I couldn't see him. I couldn't see what it was. And that's what was most mind-blowing thing. So I actually called my buddy down in South Carolina. I said, dude, I'm gonna send you a video. Sorry about the language. I'm gonna send you a video and it's gonna blow your mind. And I sent it to him. He's like, whoa, dude. So I would go out back at night. I had a camper out there, and and pitch black. And I was out there one night. I played video games a lot. I'm a child, and I sent my 6 kids upstairs so I could play with all my video games. But everybody to bed, my turn. But so yes, so I had a camper on the property, so I go out there and play with all my buddies from all over the country, right? So when I'm waiting for everybody, and I think I was scratching like a $10 cash word, I'm like doing this, so I hear, dunk, tree knock. And it's way far away, right? Now, I've heard tree knocks before. I've gone back and forth with them in my yard, but that's a whole different story. We don't want to get into that one. That's back and forth was crazy. But anyways, I heard it one time. And I said, oh, what the heck, what's going on tonight? You know, out of nowhere, right? Boom, it was like 80 feet away from me now. Before it was like way out there, and now it's right up. And I'm like, oh, somebody must have something to say. Again, I have it on my phone. I open up the camper door, and I pointed out to the black. It's just darkness beyond my light on my shed, right? And you hear what I had never heard before, because all the research I've done, it was a communication tool. Boom, tree knocks. Boom, that's how they kind of communicate, right? It hit I counted 7 times. A tree about 75 yards from me was just absolutely being decimated with whatever. That's the other thing is.
And you should see the tree.
I got pictures of the tree. You could see where it was hit, and you could see it was hit from up to down. And there's chunks missing out of bark and a tree.
It's perfectly round.
Yeah.
But it goes in about 6, 7 inches.
She'll attest to this as well. The crazy thing is, I go in there to take pictures of it and stuff like that, and get all my information, right? And I go home and I come back and I'm like, hey, come look at the tree. What the heck? There's branches and trees all in front of where I was standing taking the pictures. They didn't want me to.
See,
Yes.
these structures that you guys have found together that you've seen, have you revisited and found new ones?
Yes.
Great question.
And, what a good question.
The ones that you've seen so far, do they look like they've been there for years, or is this something fairly new?
Yeah, this is such a good question. Okay. Because this one,
yeah, so that's
we found once.
Yeah.
And we looked so many times after that, right? And Rich should be looking at his GPS. He's like, it's right here, though.
My GPS thing.
So finally, I noticed one day, wait a second, there's the tree arch still.
Right.
This thing is taken down.
Right.
So apparently they do dismantle them. Yeah.
Well, not dismantle.
Still
on that murder thing.
I know, right?
Okay.
Especially if they think like someone's like looking for them in. Yeah, like I just was in Hockomock Swamp 2 days ago, and I was down a road that I was just at a month ago, and there were definitely new things. So yeah, what a good question.
Yeah, we find that a lot. And like I've had the trail camera out where I had an incident there where it just went off like crazy. Nothing was in front of it, and then then something appeared in front of it, and I was like, what the heck's going on out there? So I go and I take my cart out, whatever. I go back and forth every day, right? And it's right on the corner of a game trail. So I come back the next day after standing out there looking at it, reading it, and there's this stack of trees on my game trail. So now the game trail's over here. They redirected the game trail. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's blatant. And right next to that, now here's the thing that put me up at 95, right? This is the thing that put me up at 95, because logic tells me that this is not possible for a human being, a child or teenager, biggest dude you know, I don't care. I walk up to a tree, it's a sapling, but it's about this big. It's about probably 4 inches, right? This tree, again, I got pictures on my phone, you're welcome to see it, is twisted and placed down to the ground. Twisted. It's got a clear twist. They got what's his last name? Barackman from Bigfoot, the Bigfoot shows there, with the Bobo and Cliff. They have a plot.
Oh, Finding Bigfoot. They never find him.
He's good friends with them. So he showed them, and he wants this piece for his museum out in Oregon. It's in my backyard. I'm just not sure how I feel about that. I'm very protective. It's funny because you get very protective of it. I won't reveal the spot. I don't want like other people with cameras. I don't want people with guns. And it's a weird, like I get goosebumps just talking about it. It's just, I have a connection to them. We left the woods one time with Dave and he says, I think they're here because of you. They have a relationship with you. There's that crazy guy, out to the freaking woods offering us cookies, you know what I mean? Freaking weirdo, go home, you know? So, but the structures are huge. Do you have any more structures?
Yep. Okay, here's another example. Very, very similar. Again in Hanson. This was around the Hanson grain area. They're just uncanny. It's really wild. Here's another one. There's a bunch of these huge scale structures.
And what year was the book? I'm sorry, I forgot that.
This book?
Yeah, what year was that when it came out?
Oh, here, look.
I meant to ask you that the other day. You got 2 copies?
I got one for you, remember? Yeah. Okay, and then here's another example of you'll see tree breaks like going in the same direction. Again, this is from Hanson.
2016. Right, so think about that. This book is out in 2016. We're doing this in 2023. But I didn't even know this book existed until she sent me the copy of it. So think about that. That kind of feeds into the, validity of it,
And we're getting to the end. I hope you're not bored.
Oh, no.
Rich, can you explain how this is likely not a natural fall, like the force it would take to break this tree?
Yeah, so, it's hard because we don't have the total area around, okay? We don't have the up. So what we do is I go stand here and I go, first thing I do is this. And I look, did something fall, did something land on it, right? So a lot of people say, oh, that's what Mother Nature does. And that's the argument constantly. But we're not out there, again, yelling Bigfoot about everything. We just find it very strange that this thing not only came down, you could see the twist into it, right? So now I watched a video yesterday. They had a video, I don't know if you saw that, Thunka, you know that guy? He's on YouTube. And they had a tree about this thick around coming out of the woods like a javelin, about 60 feet in the air. And it's right there, and these lumberjacks are like, what the, like I would be too. But yeah, so I see it as this. You see here in the middle, and then you see the twist in the bark. See where the bark goes? So depending on how high this is, right, it could have a little twist when it falls, right? But you look at the force on it, right? Look at that force. That's like the downwind, what do they call them? Shear winds or whatever. That's what that would have to be, right? So that means everything around it, something's gonna get hit, right? A shear wind's not like this big, right? Or not this big, right? They're like a couple of these big, you know what I mean? So the explanation for this is, if there's no tree above it, bringing it down in the wind, right? How did it get like this?
And the others around it were still standing.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's the thing, and that's a great point. That's the thing I was talking about, where all those trees fall down everywhere, and I'm standing in the middle of it, and then there's all big, beautiful trees around that circle, and all the trees in the middle are dead and broken off, and the bark's missing. The wind was like, hey, right about there. You know what I mean? It doesn't happen.
And speaking of wind, there is something I want to mention. So I told you I wasn't into Bigfoot at all. But on Central Street, where all the new houses are, you know what I'm talking about? Yeah. My mom was sick, and she lived in Middleborough, so I was going down that street like every day. And I noticed these structures being built like to the point that after a few months, I'm like, I need to get out of my car and start looking, right? Within, I don't know, 8 months to a year, we had like a microburst came through that area and just destroyed all the trees in there. So I went, oh, what a shame. Like, those structures are all going to be gone. Guess what? All the trees were gone. All the structures was still standing, which made me feel like there is some kind of like genius to it, that maybe they're wind resistant, because I have no everything looked down, like everything was crashed down, but these things were still standing. I'm so glad I got to document all that. I was so sad when they built those houses there. It was
I remember talking about that.
so sad. But like, I was interested because it was right around the corner from the Class A in Hanson, so.
And it seemed like she was talking about too, it seems like it's on a line right through my property, right back to the Taunton River, right back to that track. And I believe you have to understand their migration would be a lot shorter than ours, right? I mean, they get from point A to point B a lot quicker than us. They could travel at night. It'd be hard for us to do. I know going through my yard, you'd have a hard time getting out there. It's bad enough, like they said, kids don't play in the woods anymore, but they sure as heck wouldn't pick my woods to play in the first place. Some of that area is very difficult, and you can get spun around pretty bad. So, but we believe these are like a form of communication. So that's what we're starting to talk about more at that level, where we're wondering why there's always a tree like this when we enter a place or enter an area. You know what I mean? So why is that there? Is that maybe it's a clan name? I don't know. You got to be open-minded and have fun with it, you know. And then maybe you'll find some realities, you know, possibly in the end, right? So yeah, that one's up in the air. Look at, there's a stump, and it's just laying on a branch.
And we find a lot like this. One we found 30 feet in the air, and it just seemed impossible.
It was 30 feet in the air, and the other end was, well, it was actually, the bottom was like this. I was up here. I got a picture of me like this under it, and then it had these huge branches, like just woven into these other branches like this, like way up in the air.
It's almost like sewing.
It is.
But with with young saplings.
And every time when you walk up to it, your reality gets a little bit altered. Like for me, I'm like looking up going, oh man. Like here we go again. Like those are thumbs.
But some of them like
Strong thumbs.
truly are so artistic and beautiful. Like they're awe-inspiring.
Yeah, that Dreamcatcher one's my favorite.
Okay, this is the last slide. And I wasn't sure if I should put this in there, but my daughter was like, you have to. Because I've been trying to find it. I knew within 70 yards where the, on Route 27, where the Class A sighting was. But then I nailed it down. I went to Parker Sheds yesterday, drove down. I was looking for a gravel pit because in the description it says that it was coming out of a gravel pit. Well, the gravel pit's now down near Tri-Town. That doesn't make any sense. But then I heard from a local that behind Parker Sheds for years was a gravel pit. So I'm like, well, anybody from Hanson would still think of it as a gravel pit. So I talked to the owner and he said, yeah, this used to be a gravel pit and everything. And I'm like, well, how do you get out behind President Titanium? And he's like, well, it's private property. No one goes out there. He's like, we used to drive like guard dirt bikes when we were kids, but nobody goes out there. I look on Google Earth and there's behind, I mean, you can think what you want, but if you look at the stride of that, that's not a person. It's not a stump. I don't know what it is, but I thought I would just show you.
And this is a method that a lot of people have been doing. You know what I mean? I have trouble, you know, looking at it and seeing things, but some of them have pulled up some pretty things that I can't dispute either. You know, when I look at it, I'm like,
I mean, it's hard. It's don't get into it. It's hard to tell, but it's interesting. And if you want to look at it yourself, just go on Google Maps, look behind, and then follow the, like, I didn't realize there was so, and interesting enough, those paths lead to Central Street where I found all the other stuff.
Yeah, it's too, the locations are just too coincidental. You know what I mean?
All right, that concludes the Bridgewater Triangle presentation. Thank you so much, Rich.
Thank you for having me.